What if the Bible stories aren't just tales, but a map to God's epic plan? Hey, my name's Casey. I'm a former pastor with over 20 years experience in the ministry and or in training for such. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in biblical studies, and I want to teach you how to read, study, interpret, and apply the Bible. Today, we're looking at biblical narrative, those epic stories in the Bible that teach us about faith, God, and life. Think David versus Goliath or Noah's Ark. Ready to unpack what makes those stories tick? Well, let's do it. Well, first, what's a narrative? Well, a narrative is just a story. It's got a narrator, someone telling the story who sets the tone, gives us the information. It could be first person, like I saw God's power, second person, like you, or third person, zooming in on he, she, or they. The narrator might know everything, or the narrator may only know a slice of the story. Either way, they choose what to tell us and how to keep us hooked into the narrative. Now, key features of a narrative are easy. Every good story needs three things. One, you need characters. You need people. There's a hero, there's a villain, there's sidekicks. Think Moses, Pharaoh, and the Israelites. There's a plot, there's action. Something is happening in the story. There's setup, there's drama, there's build-up, there are peaks, there are valleys, there's a winding down, there's a wrap-up at the end. Like Jonah running from God, getting swallowed by a fish, and then finally obeying. There's setting. Well, where and when does this story take place? There's geographical setting, like Egypt's deserts, historical setting, like ancient Israel, or a temporal setting, like in the beginning. What makes biblical narrative different or special? Well, biblical narratives aren't just stories. They're history. They're also full of theology and God's truth. They're about God's glory through Jesus, saving and transforming sinners. They've got layers even. Stewart and Fee point to 3 layers in biblical narrative. Well, you have the meta-narrative. That's God's big redemption plan from Genesis to Revelation. You have a second level of covenants, like God's promises to Abraham or Moses. And then you have the first level, individual stories, like Joseph's rise from slave to ruler. They're historical. We're talking about real events. They're theological. They reveal God's truth. But they're also phenomenological. They describe things as they appear. We're not talking about a science textbook. So no, the Bible doesn't say the earth is flat, but it might describe a sunrise as it looks to us. Old Testament narratives have very unique flavors. Of course, all Scripture has 2 narrators, the human narrator and the divine, strategically picking what to share and how to share it for their purposes. But Old Testament themes pop up like Easter eggs, wilderness versus fruitfulness, water versus life, covenant promises. Ever notice how many wives are found by wells in Genesis? Abraham's servant, Isaac, Jacob. Wells are like the OG dating app. Repetition drives points home as well, like God is faithful, echoed in story after story after story. Plus, you've got genealogies, interruptions, and typology, where people or events foreshadow Jesus, like the Passover lamb pointing to Christ's sacrifice. However, watch out for these traps. When reading biblical narratives, avoid these pitfalls. One is moralism. It's not just be good. It's about gospel transformation. How does this story change my life? Avoid mysticism. Stick to the original meaning of the authors, not secret codes or hidden messages. Avoid nationalism. The Old Testament's about Israel and the church, not your country. Avoid egoism. The hero of the Bible is God and Jesus, not you. Keep the big picture clear in your mind, God's redemptive plan, and you'll see the stories clearer. Rather, ask yourself a few basic questions when you read. What did this passage mean for the nation of Israel? Second, what does this passage mean for the church? Third, what does this passage teach me about God, man, sin, and salvation? Where do I fit into this narrative? And finally, after all of that, and based on all of that, how does it apply to me personally? So next time you read a Bible story, look for the narrator's angle. Look for the plot points, maybe even twists. But also look for God's bigger plan of redemption for His people. And finally, ask good questions. Hey, it's like a divine movie marathon full of divine truth. Drop a comment or question in the comment section. Also be sure to like, share, and follow for more tips on unlocking Scripture.